Hey guys, it's Don here from the board. Gonna be doing just another impromptu live stream. So I haven't advertised this or anything like that because today my vehicle is actually getting a service and my airbag replaced. So my vehicle is one of those things that oh, okay, so the delay for things going live seems to be quite long, so let's just restart again because obviously I can see in the screen it's just cut in. So this is an impromptu live stream. My vehicle is actually in for service today and I'm having my airbag replaced because it's one of those faulty Takata airbags, which of course nobody likes to find out that the safety devices on your vehicle aren't going to protect you. So while I'm waiting for that to be done, I thought I'd just hop on and do some casting. I'm going to be casting the Movember keycap. I did some the other week, and I thought they turned out okay. I haven't really done much post-processing on them yet, so we're just going to do some more. However, instead of doing it with the clear resin that I did last time, I'm going to be doing the polyurethane white resin, and I'm hoping to dye it and see how it turns out. Hopefully it won't be too sort of crispy, Rice crispy, but we'll see how we go. Now last time I had done these two using the clear resin with the black. One was done with the synth 1.0, 1.2, and the other one was done with the synth 2.0. So if I just get them into camera view, see if it'll actually focus close up. Yep, so the one with the thicker border on this side is actually with the old synth, and the one with the thinner border of the keycap is done with the new synth. And Binge was kind enough to explain to me that the thinner wall with the new synth is actually designed so that you can use top row keycaps. So at least there's a good reason why they have a change in the design. What I've done just then as well quickly was I actually tested the fitment on these. So this is the one with the old synth with the thick border, and I've just got a cherry MX green here, and it's fairly snug. It's not really going anywhere, which is nice, which is good. But I found that with the new synth it was actually really loose, so you can see it's just popped off. I don't know why that is. The actual stem, you know, it fits, but you can see it just goes flying. However, if I change over to a Fosen, with the Fosen it's actually more snug. So if I just fit that onto the Fosen, you can see that the flick, it is moving up the stem, but it just doesn't go flying off the stem. Not 100% sure why that is. Obviously the different stem thicknesses will probably play a part. However, you know, there's a cherry blue there. Let's get that on. And you can see the blue's actually fitting okay as well. It's kind of like the Fosen. I feel like it's probably gonna pop off, but at the moment it's holding quite well. Hey Pete! Yes, 800 subs. Thank you very much for coming along to that. That's pretty cool. Was not expecting to see you on this live stream at all. So yeah, just I haven't really done any base polishing or anything like that on these yet. I thought I'd do them all in a batch once I actually had some more keycaps. Now, the other thing that I'm going to be doing slightly differently today is I'm going to be lubricating these synths slightly differently. I was having a chat with Ski with Peter's at work, can't hear me, doesn't have headphones, but congrats. So, well, thumbs up for me. I'm just gonna have to say thank you for coming along. So, wow, we're actually up to 6 now, which I think is fantastic for an impromptu live stream. So, yeah, for those other 5 people, thank you. Now, what was I saying? Yes, I'm going to be doing something slightly different with the lubrication on the synths. So previously you would have seen me use my old Vaseline trick. So I've got a syringe, a fat syringe, where I have Vaseline in it and I use it to wipe it all over. But this time, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to do something slightly different because I was talking with Binge and he recommended that I could also try the dipping method. So what I mean by the dipping method is you get your release agent, whatever it is, and you just dunk it in. Now, I don't have expensive liquid release agents, so I did some research and I found probably there was a whole bunch of different oils out there that have very low viscosity. Now, because polyurethane is it's a relatively firm plastic, I thought, you know, I don't know how reactive it is, but we'll just have to see how it goes. And previously, I know that people have used vegetable oils. I've actually done coconut oil before, and it's worked. Hey, Sean. So, Rabian? Ski with Pete cameo. Well, he's gone home, so he'll be back later. Hopefully, we'll see. Anyway, I've used some vegetable oils before, and they've kind of had, you know, varying results kind of work thing. And I was talking with my wife to see what kind of oils I had available that my wife didn't mind me pinching some to try. And she was like, well, I've got this bottle of flax oil, which has been sitting in the fridge for like 2 years. Now, it's well past its use by date, best before date. You'll see down here, it's the 28th of May 2015. Now, my wife had actually bought this to do some cast iron seasoning. And so, besides that, we practically have a full bottle. This has been in the fridge, and I don't know if you can see the reflection, but at 4 degrees, this is still liquid, but it's an oil, which is pretty good. So I felt that it had a low viscosity, so we're going to have a try and seeing if flaxseed oil is a workable, suitable release agent for casting with polyurethane. Or at least, should I say, cheap polyurethane. So I'm going to be working with the same sort of poly that I had before, which is the Aldex Craft Cast. It's in the white. And there is my 2 molds. So one was the original mold and one was the off-cast mold of the November 2017 Keycap. So we'll see how we go with that as well. Thank you very much, Sean, for the 800 comment. Really appreciate everyone who's come along to help us get to 800. Now, if you haven't seen the post yet, if you haven't seen the video yet, we now have the Gleam IO competition. It's already available, so head over and check that out, and you can be in the chance to win one of our mugs, one of the mugs with our logo on it. Now, of course, with anything, it's always important to have PPE, which means gloves, 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 gloves. So let's get cracking. Hey, Dr. Doomapple, thanks very much for coming along. Much appreciated. Pretty cool, pretty cool. It's always nice to be able to join in a live stream. Pretty random live stream, but we'll see how we go. So I've got a slightly different setup compared to before in that I've just got some flat bottom deep dishes. I've got a larger container, so when I pour my resins into it, they're not going to get knocked over as easily. I'm still using my metal probes as my mixing sticks, as you can see there, and then just odd bits and pieces and tools that I've used previously as well. So what is my order of events? My order of events is I need to pour some resins in and see if I can get kind of a oh, that lid's very tight. See how I go with that. So let's give that a good amount. Now I've done an extra large amount of pour because I can. I rarely work with such large volumes, but you know what? I'm gonna see if we can get through some of this today. How's everyone doing today? Wherever you are in the world. If you've joined in a little bit later, right now it's actually daytime in Sydney. It's actually normal work hours in Sydney, but I'm not working because I've taken today off so I can go and get my car serviced and have a defective airbag replaced. So unfortunately I was affected by the worldwide Takata airbag recall. And I figured, well, it's going to take them 5 hours to take out my dashboard to replace the airbag, so you know what? I might as well do some live streaming while we're at it. of course, you know, I could have gone back to bed or goodness knows what, but hey, that's me saying let's just get happening in the community some. So there's my two resins. I've got a whole bunch of colors which are off screen at the moment, so that's my tray of colors. We'll see how we go. For those who are watching, what color should I make the mustache on these keycaps? So I'm going to be doing them in pairs, so 2 at a time. What color should I make these first 2? Throw out a random kind of color that you like, and I'll see what I've got in terms of the closest color. Now I've got to wait for the delay. So let's just put that over there for the moment, out of the way. Some paper. No? Nobody wants to recommend a color? Should I just be boring and do straight black? Sounds like it. Nobody wants to tell me a color. Burgundy. Okay, so I don't have burgundy, but I do have some reds. Let's pull up some reds and see what options we've got in the red. Yeah. Where's my red? So there's a red. Where's my other red? And there's a scarlet red. And there's a ruby red. Okay, so just going to give that a swirl so you can kind of see the richness of the color. So that's the ruby red. And then I've got red, which is more of a pinkish red. Pinkish red. And then I've got the scarlet red, which is kind of like a blood red of sorts. I actually don't know what Ceresia is. Purple? Well, I've already gone with the red path, but keep those colors in mind, because if this works and we go on to the next batch, then I'll do that. So, do we want red, scarlet red, or do we want ruby red? Anybody? Bueller? Personally, I think scarlet and ruby are nicer, but if you guys want slightly pinky red, then the red will do. Ruby! Alright, Andrew beats everybody to the punch. We're going to go with ruby. So, there's my color mixing one. You can see that there. I don't need very much of this because it's pretty strong. Oh, Dr. Doomapple, you've been beaten to the punch. So, Andrew came in first. We're going to go with the ruby red, and 1 drop is all I'm going to need. 1 drop is all I'm going to need. Alright, so because we're only going to be doing the mustache bit first, and we're going to let that sort of set primarily, I only want a little bit of this. So let's pull that up, and I'm going to go with, let's say, what do you reckon? 4 drops. Get rid of that. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drop out the rest of that. And then on this side, well actually, I'm going to pre-mix that in. Might even end up with some flecks of glow in the dark, because there was some glow in the dark that was in here before. So we'll have to see how that turns out. Alright, so 4 drops of the clear now. Wait for some of those bubbles to evacuate out. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. Yeehaw. I always like mixing resins and colors. My wife does watercolors, and yeah, I wouldn't say that that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with her, but it's something that I really appreciate her doing. And she taught me how to paint basics and watercolors, and I used to go on Wednesday nights to pick her up from art class and stuff like that. Well, that was when she still used to go to art class before the baby came along. But yeah, so I do have a love and appreciation of art and colors and color mixing, which is always lovely. So it's time to, well, hopefully I've given that sufficiently a mix. It's hard to see once the colors go in because yeah, but I think that's fairly mixed. It's very small volumes. And I do apologize if I'm not watching and reading the chat, because obviously I'm trying to work relatively quickly on this before it sets. Get some mow action happening. Now, I'm not using headcam at the moment, only because I didn't have it ready and set up, but we can go to headcam in a moment afterwards, next round, if people want it. Probably because it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing with the actual inside as well, rather than the top-down cam, but there's not much to it. I'm just using the probe and I'm just filling in the actual spaces within the mold that I'm trying to achieve the color in. So this is just going to be a multi-shot, I suppose. Now, normally my experience with this particular dye and the polyurethane is that it's going to react in large volumes and cause a lot of bubbles. So I don't want to do a colored base, which means all of these bases are going to be white. I can do small features in color, which is fine, because the colors, even if they bubble in it's a fine layer, it's not going to affect the actual end result. So if you guys want to do that kind of color schemes and shotting, I'm more than happy to, but I'm not going to be doing full-blown color fills at the moment with these, only because of the limitation of the actual resin reacting to these dyes. These dyes, the PSTFs, I think probably have some water content in it, and polyurethane doesn't like water. The actual reaction and the heating causes the water and gas vapor to come out, which causes the bubbles. So that's why I like the clear stuff, because the clear stuff that I normally work with, I can make it milky and opaque by adding solids into it, powders into it. Not completely opaque like polyurethane is, but it works well with these dyes, and it also has a much longer setting time, so I can degas and get out bubbles and stuff like that through traditional tapping methods, since I only gravity cast. Hopefully everyone's chilling out okay, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Now, for those who probably don't know, we've got somebody in the actual chat at the moment who's recently just launched a store, I believe. So if you want to throw out an address and have people check out your store, you're more than welcome to. You just need to pass it so that the auto filtering system doesn't kill off your link. Nix, is it possible to make softer keycaps this way, or can someone point me to a hard rubber like resin? You can make softer keycaps. It's all about the material properties of the resin that you use. You can get pouring and set rubbers, so two-part rubbers that you can actually pour into molds like this. It would work exactly the same way. It's just a matter of making sure that your mold will have a proper release agent so it doesn't get ripped to shreds when you demold the rubber from it. Yeah, so chill caps, you've been around for a while now, haven't you? And you've been doing sort of dye subcaps for a little while, which has been pretty cool. But launching the store is always an achievement, because it means you're taking it to the next level. Next level shiz, man. So I've got a little bit of random color stuff, and I'm just gonna put it into a different mold that I have off screen, because slightly different application. Don't want to waste all of my resins if I can avoid it. Now we just got to wait for it to set, and you can see with this particular phase it's starting to gel up now. Well, you can sort of see as I scrape it, it's kind of leaving lines. Well, you just have to trust me that it's actually starting to gel. So, and I'm just gonna scrape it up and pop it into a different object that I have, different mold that I have, for a bit of fun, if you can call it that. Since March, well, March to August is a good 5 months. So 5 months is it's almost halfway. Well, it's more than halfway to a baby. It's a very long time, to be honest. And I should know all about that. 5 months. March, huh? March. Alrighty, so that's pretty much. We're just gonna wait for that to set. Still, it's fun to build. I'm not much of a web development kind of guy, so I don't know how fun it is to actually build websites. Not my kind of thing, but that's okay. Alright, so now we're going to get to the fun part. Now, of course, with the original synth, as I've previously mentioned, the actual stem is a little bit loose. There's a bit of wobble available to it, so your stems will actually end up being slightly off center potentially, and one way to get around that is to put some shims, some tape shims. So I've just got some masking tape, and what you do is you just cut a couple of bits of tape, and then you can tape it on the edges, and it just gives it that extra thickness to help with its movements, or should I say to help reduce its movements. Yeah, it's actually a lot harder to work with gloves because you don't get the fine dexterity skills that you normally would when you don't have gloves on. I mean, I've done a lot of work over the years in labs and stuff like that, engineering labs, science labs, with gloves on, but you never really do small finicky things like casting caps, so it's always a learning experience for sure. So I'm just whacking a bit of tape on there. Alright, so sorry I had to do that off the camera, but there's a bit of coming into focus. There we go. So I've just popped a bit of masking tape on the two long ends, and in theory, once I actually drop that back in again, it should be, yeah, it's quite snug. So there we go. Should be good once it goes in. And with the Synth 2.0, we don't need any treatment because it's quite a firm fit. Like, there is a little bit of rotation, but I'm not too concerned. Okay, so here's my flax oil. It's still actually quite cool, even though it's been out of the fridge for a little bit now. And I'm going to pour, it's probably a reasonable amount, in, so I can actually dip bits in. It's quite a yellow oil, and you can see it flows quite freely. It smells, doesn't smell like it's off, but it definitely doesn't smell like, I suppose, cooking oil. You can cook with flax oil. It's quite organic and quite healthy. So what I've done is I've actually got obviously a whole bunch of toilet paper here, but I've also got a bit of chucks, just chucks material, and I'll use that to kind of act as my wiping and sponge of sorts for any excess. And I'll just keep it all on that yellow one there, because then I can see the actual color of the oil. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Just flatten that out. So let's try and dip. So it's gone all the way in. Just give that a bit of a swirl around. Ooh, I'm feeling, well, I've already got my fingers into it, so there we go. It looks like the whole thing is going to be greased up. So it's just it's so weird doing this. Well, can't be any worse than anything else we do in this community, right? So let's get that synth nice and coated as well. Get that all the way around. Whoa, it splashes, so it's quite it's low viscosity enough that it can actually splash up, which is good to know all at the same time. So what I'm going to do is, I want it to drip off, but I don't really have any way of making that happen. So I'm actually going to put it, what's the best way? I want the orientation to be down because the excess will be going downwards into the actual mold. So we'll put that there for the moment and see what happens. And shake off the excess on that. Oh, I've got to be careful with shaking because it's quite liquid and it's going everywhere. Woo! Look at that. So you can see it's been splashing around on my hands. So I've got to be very careful there. I need another piece. So here's a wet piece. That's not very good. Just gonna clean my hands a little bit, and then I'll cut another piece to work with. It's going to be a fun exercise, I think. Always be prepared with lots of wiping and cleaning materials when you're working doing keycaps, by the way. It's just one of those things. You always be prepared. So I've just got the rest of that piece. I'm just going to cut a couple bits more, and then that way I can clean up. So where's everyone dialing in from today? 10 people. We're up to 10 people. How cool is that? So like I said the other day, current record actually for this channel on any stream, scheduled or impromptu, is about 21, 22. I don't anticipate to break that record today, but we'll see how we go, I guess. So I'm going to just start wiping the excess off because I have to get it out from inside here as well. I don't want it dripping into the actual keycap because that's obviously going to be a pain. There is relative viscosity to all of this, and it has to stick naturally. But the good thing about oils, I guess, is even after you wipe it, it's just naturally going to film over itself. It's going to do its thing and it wants to just balance out. I don't know if it's going to glaze over and smooth up by itself naturally or not, or if it'll end up with streak lines as it does with the Vaseline, because the Vaseline viscosity is quite thick. But I guess we'll see. Now, just want to blow that out of the actual hole somewhat. There's a bit of gunk in there. Clean that out, and then onto the other one. Hey, Outrage Pudding, great to see you. I hope everybody is safe and healthy over in your direction after the incident yesterday. So, and of course, for those who weren't aware, there was some random dude who decided to get in a vehicle and try and hurt people over in France. So it didn't really make mainstream media over here, but I'm very glad that Outrage Pudding and everyone that we talked about yesterday is safe. So now for those who are joining in a little bit late, I'm just doing some casting for the Movember keycap. I've actually asked the guys in chat what color they want for this particular keycap with the mustache, and they went with, well, they got beaten to the punch So the first two is actually going to be with the ruby red. Ruby red. So I can see this is going to get very messy and very oily because I got oil going everywhere. Now it's time to dip the crucible, the cruciform. So I only want it to go in, well, actually I probably want it to go a little bit higher simply because I need it to be able to come out cleanly, but because there's so much excess oil on this, I can just wipe the actual crucifix after I've dunked it in and it should be fine. So going to do that. See if I can maintain it on the actual camera because streaming is hard. Now this may or may not turn out well simply because I've never done it with flaxseed oil before. I don't know if anybody else has. Plus the thickness and coating of the oil may actually end up being very loose on the stem. Now I'm okay with that because you can always make keycaps tighter, but it's a lot harder to fix if the keycaps are too tight. Yeah, if it's too tight, because then you're going to run into issues of cracking and splitting, and you can't really file it down on the inside, and so on and so forth. So it's always better to err on the loose side if possible, and then make it tighter through other methods of processing. So now I'm just going to start oiling up this one. I dip the cruciform in and try and just clean that off. It's actually quite funny. I was reading some news articles and commentary about the whole terrorism thing, and terrorism acts, while they create a lot of activity when it occurs, they're almost becoming so mainstream that people just go, oh no, it's just another attack. Like, it's no longer having the same impact because people just have accepted that terrorism is occurring and they're going to have to go out and live their own lives anyway. They can't stay at home and live in terror. And for those who are going to stay at home anyway, they're probably going to be on the internet regardless. So ultimately, the more attacks you do, the less the impact becomes. At least that's what a lot of commentary tends to point towards, which is very true. At the same time, they'll be like, oh, we'll wait until everyone feels safe again and we'll have another attack. But these days, with the information age, I don't know if we forget that quickly anymore. The constant threat of terrorism is forever there. It's forever there. Okay, so these guys look like they've firmed up nicely. I'm going to just gently touch one with the probe and see. Yep, so it's not lifting up on the probe. So that skin of color is pretty good, which is pretty there. Most public transport is back online, which is excellent to hear. Now, idiots outside revving their motorbikes. Now, so last time, if I recall correctly, it was about 6 milliliters roughly to fill both of these molds. So we're going to try doing that again. And we're going to just use the white container. So just going to probably shouldn't use that one because that's got oil in it. Wipe out the inside of this, free from any dust. And then we'll see how we go. Go in the bin. Right, so we want 6 mil, which means I need a full squeeze of this pipette. Part A. Oh, didn't manage to get it. There's 3 mil going in there. So the street that I live in, it's the main street in my suburb, and there's 2 speed bumps plus a roundabout within like 400 meters. And yet idiots do that all the time. And it's kind of like, dude, why? What's the deal? You know, what do you think you're doing? You're trying to impress somebody that is going to be walking the street, and you're threatening their life by driving around like an idiot. Like, that's really going to impress them? Nobody cares, man. Alright, so here we go. So let's get that in. Come on. Get that back down, and let's mix. People who live their lives a quarter mile at a time. Well, there's been an incident on this road where a 8-year-old boy was actually hit by a vehicle that was speeding down here just in front of one of the crossings. So, you know, that particular driver is potentially looking at a lot of charges in regards to that. And last year, actually, a motorcyclist was killed at one of these intersection bits on our street, because what had happened was they were flying down. They went over the top of a one of the speed bump, because it's a pedestrian walkway speed bump. So it's not like one of those very short bumps, but it's actually got a flat top so pedestrians can walk across it. And they actually were speeding along, coming out so fast that the motorist who came out of the side street didn't realize that they were going to come up that fast, and they slammed into the side of the car and ended up coming off the bike, hitting a power pole, telephone pole, right in front of the bakery. And the dude got taken to hospital and he passed away. He died. I came home and the entire street was cordoned off, and I was like, whoa, okay, what happened here? You know, there was police everywhere and ambulance, and there was, you know, bits of shrapnel on the road. It wasn't until I spoke to my wife that she told me there'd been some major accident, the road being closed for like 4 hours, that I realized it was that bad. And the next day, yeah, it was in the news, and when I went to work in the morning, there was still blood on the floor on the roadside in front of the bakery. So it was kind of like, well, that was a pretty major incident, wasn't it? So here we go. I've done the mixing, and now we're going to pour up. Now, was 6 mil too much? I don't know. No, it seems like it was pretty close. Okay, so it's starting to thicken already, which is a good and a bad sign, because it means I've got to work fast and get these in. So one goes, that's the correct orientation. Yes, fantastic. Push that in, push that in. Getting a bit of overflow there, but that's okay. Oh, and 2, gotta go in quick. Alrighty, and let's get the crucifix in. That's 1, and crucifix into number 2. It's very tight with the shims in. There we go. Alright, so now we play the waiting game. Cool. Now we play the waiting game. So, the time right now is 38:50 on my stream clock. We'll have to wait 3 minutes or so for it to start to solidify, and then it'll probably take about 10-15 minutes for it to actually harden. Yeah, now we can just chill out and chat, I suppose. I can twiddle my thumbs, try and look, you know, like I know what I'm doing, which is not always the case. Yeah, terrible. No, that's definitely starting to gel up there. Now, of course, we don't always have to be talking mechanical keyboards, so if you want to chat about any other random topics at hand, feel free. While we're waiting, I guess you guys can debate about what your next color is that you want to have a go with this on. I know that you guys were saying the scarlet or the purple or whatever the cerusia is. Is cerusia a blue color? Now I've got my gloves on, so I don't really want to be typing away. My workspace is way more organized than your dye stub station. I'm going to say no, because this entire space is like my entire desk. I've got a monitor right in front, monitor to the side, I've got a 3D printer, and this is the only actual space I use. Everything else is either on the floor or in containers that I drag up and down and put stuff on. I have a filing cabinet over here where I pull out the drawers and I put crap on top of it, because otherwise it would normally live on my desk like my keyboard. What colors do I have? I have 27 colors from the Barnes PSTF range. So if you want to Google Barnes, I don't know, crafting supplies, molding supplies or something like that, it's got like a dark bluish kind of logo, and you can go to their PSTF dyes. I've got one of every one of those 27 colors in that range. So we're now at 41 minutes, which means it should be starting to gel up. I'm not seeing any color change yet, and you can obviously see that there, that they haven't started doing anything funky. I wonder if it's reacting really badly to the flax. I don't know. We'll have to see. Man, 800 subs, 800 subscribers. That's pretty cool. What do you guys think? Should we do another giveaway at 900, or should we do one at 1,000? Of course, if we go to 1,000, because there's a 200 jump, we might try and do something a little bit bigger. Maybe a t-shirt instead, or a hoodie, something like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? I suppose now that for the Northern Hemisphere, you're going to be starting to go into autumn and then winter. So I don't expect to hit 1,000 probably another 2 or 3 months at least, even at the rate that we're tracking, roughly about 100 a month. But we've been pretty lucky with that so far. So that might be a good time to actually win a hoodie. What do you reckon? What's going on with you? Why are you not curing? Now, of course, anybody who knows anything about reaction rates and chemistry is that the greater the mass, the faster reactions go. And the higher the temperature, the rate of reaction also increases. So because we're working with such small volumes, and it is still quite cool, probably only around sort of 18, 20 degrees in here, the rate of reaction is going to be slower. The advertised rate of reaction is at 25 degrees Celsius, and every 10 degrees difference in temperature is a order of magnitude, i.e. 100. Sorry, 100%. So if you're 10 degrees hotter, it will actually be twice as fast, whereas if you're 10 degrees cooler, it's actually going to be half as fast. And that's just generally how rate of reactions are considered. So we're probably about 5 or so degrees, which means it's running about maybe 75% speed. So I would expect it probably to be hitting around the sort of 5 or 6 minute mark really before anything starts to happen. But because we're actually using such low volumes, it's probably also running quite slow. Unless if there's something weird catastrophically happening inside. But I'm still not seeing any color, which is a little bit worrying. Although this top one here in this bottom corner is starting to turn a little bit milky around the edges. So that's looking positive. The actual change generally happens very quickly, because once it gets to a runaway stage, it just takes over like that, and the whole thing can just turn color. But of course you actually have to get to that stage. It's starting to turn milky on this bottom one here as well. So I'm hopefully going to see some reaction occur. So, Outrage Pudding, the board merch is always awesome. Love the board t-shirt. Sweet. Turquoise. I do have a turquoise. I just got to find it. There we go. There's the turquoise. Alright. I quite like the turquoise. I also like the Poly Super Blue. It's quite a really bright blue. So turquoise is actually quite popular. I'm only down to a very small amount of this left in my bottle here. At one point I had a particular person ask for sliders. So I'd done some MX sliders, clones of the Nerva Touch, and I did an entire HHKB set for them in turquoise, which, yeah, ended up using a lot of my turquoise. So, oh, what's going on here? The suction isn't working. Oh, look, you can see it's starting to turn milky on top now. It's just very, very bloody slow, aren't you? I'm gonna get dye all over my fingers now, but that's okay. It's starting to turn milky. It's been very slow, very slow. So how long has that taken? It's almost 10 minutes actually. It's been 8 minutes for that to start turning milky, and once it turns completely white, it'd still be a little while before it actually ends up firm enough and solid enough for me to demold and remove. Yeah, so how many of you guys actually do create artisans and cast? Just out of curiosity. I mean, dye subbing, that's slightly differently, but sculpting and casting is really kind of what I'm poking my question at. The other things that I do have available with me is I've got some silver powder here, some metallic silver, and I've also got very dusty metallic gold powder, and I also have some glow-in-the-dark powder too, so luminous powder. So if you guys want me to play around a little bit with that, I can as well. Now that all depends though on if this flaxseed oil release agent doesn't mess with the cap so badly that it doesn't work. Now look at that, it's gone milky, but it's still quite liquid and soft because I can poke that, and you can even see the indent right there on that. So it'll be a little bit before I can demold that. Just gonna keep chilling out. I suppose that's one of the problems with doing a live stream casting, is compared to like a keyboard build where you can actually be actively soldering and putting in switches and screwing stuff. Casting's kind of boring in that sense because you just gotta wait and wait and wait and wait. So yeah, I don't know. We're back down to 5, but you know, it's alright. What can you say? Just idle chill time. Do a lot of you guys use Discord? I know that Outrage Pudding does, but I'm not sure if the other guys do. Are you all on the Met Keys Discord, or do you have other Discords that you hang out in? What do I usually do while waiting for resin to cast? Well, normally because I use the 24-hour stuff, I actually cast it and then I put it away, and then I go and do other stuff because I don't have to wait. I bought this because I thought it would be faster, but then it ended up not being that much faster, and because of the actual issues with the dyes, I don't have dyes that are natively compatible with the polyurethanes, only because I didn't want to spend a lot of money getting another range of dies when I already had all these dies. That's why I haven't done a lot of casting with the polyurethane. The polyurethane works really well if you have a lot of molds. So because I've only got 2 running now with only 2 synths, I'm limited. But if I was preparing a whole array and I was pouring, mixing, pouring, mixing, pouring, mixing, by the time I got to the end of that array and I could go back to number 1 and demold, then I could just keep cycling through. Now, talking with Binge, he said that he's got about 50 synths at home across the different versions. But they only run 12 at a time. So what that tells me is that 12 at a time is the maximum number of keycaps that they can pour, cast, and set before the gel action of the resin occurs. And then they could probably go back and demold and stuff like that after 12. So yeah, if I had 12, I would certainly be able to line it all up and just go pump, 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 and it'd be pretty cool, but I don't. Did I have any practice sculpting before I started making keycaps? The answer is yes and no. I had played with modeling clay as part of school. I've done clay work as part of school art, like back in the 90s, and mid 2000s, you know, I was just playing around, and I actually bought that big lump of the NSP that the guys at the Sydney meetup got to play with. That was really more large scale sculpting, not small scale sculpting, and it was very rough. I didn't have, and I still don't have, a lot of sculpting experience and practice, so the stuff that I make, I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I've sculpted that just didn't look good or turn out well, and I've just gone and scrubbed it. So a lot of my earlier designs on the OEM caps before I got the synth was all just top surface. It was just a layer of top surface and then a pattern on it. Whereas like some of my more later stuff, once I got the synth, allowed me a bit more freedom because I wasn't bounded to what I could add here. So here's an example of one of my earlier sculpts that never actually made it anywhere, and this was a scarab. Now it's a Scarab Beetle with a hole and indent on the top because I've got a lot of stuff lying around and it's all dusty. I've actually got some real gemstones, so these aren't rhinestones or fakes, these are actual real gemstones, and I was trying to see if I could actually get them embedded to stick. Unfortunately, my experimentation with this found that the gems, if they're fully embedded, they don't refract very well, so they don't have that luster and shine and gleam, which pretty much meant it didn't really work very well in that format. And if I was to glue it on, the amount of glue that I can get as like a drop of super glue was actually going over and ruining the look of the keycap. So that's why I still have all those gemstones and I haven't actually done anything with that sculpt. Now that I have the synth though, it's something that I could potentially revisit and design the socket for gluing in gemstones to be a little bit better and not be such an issue if there's the actual super glue around it, but I just haven't really gone down that way. So this is starting to firm up, which is good. It's still soft. I can still leave dents, but it's not as noticeable dents. So yeah. Now, Dr. Doomapple says, I doubt that I'll be able to sculpt something that looks good, to be honest. Designing some PCBs. Practice. Practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, and it doesn't matter what it is, music, art, writing, drawing, driving, you're going to get better. So if you do want to get into sculpting and creating artisan products, there's no reason why you can't. Just don't be discouraged if the first ones, second ones, third ones, 10th ones don't look what you expect them to be. On DeviantArt, they do this thing where it's like revisiting something that you drew after a certain period. So it's typically like, I drew this last year, this is where I'm at this year. And it's the same subject, and you can see the development in style, which is really cool. Some of my earlier sculpts to some of my later sculpts, you know, it doesn't look like there's a lot of improvement, but the difference is I'm more comfortable in sculpting and I can sculpt faster because I have a better idea of what I'm doing, which helps, which is really good. As for PCB design, it's no different, right? The first time you make a PCB design and you're routing trace lines and you're trying to put crystals and finding where's the best place to put, you know, your MOSFET and this, that, and the other, it's probably not the best. But the more you work with it, the more you design PCBs, the more you're familiar you're going to be with it, and therefore you're going to end up with a really cool product. So people like Amtra, for example, you know, he knocks out all these macro pads really quickly now because he's got that experience, he's got that practice in creating, because he knows exactly how to set it up. Plus he's probably got a whole bunch of stuff saved that's easy for him to grab and modify and add and chuck in and stuff like that. So, and yes, in regards to putting it away, I usually put it in the bathroom on the high windowsill, so she can never reach it because it's like double her height and she can't climb up tile walls yet. I would be very scared if she could, because then I might need to call an exorcist. Alrighty, it's pretty firm. I'm gonna pop it out of the mold, but I'm not gonna pop the stem out, because if you do that too early, you can actually damage the stem insert. So we'll see how this interaction went. Oh. I'm laughing because it's so murderous looking. Look at that. It's like this dude's just gone and, I don't know. It's a definition of a redhead right there. A little bit of over dye there, but that's okay. So that's pretty funky. His chin's nice and smooth though, so we'll just lay that there. And let's check out the other one. Oh, looks like he got a bit of blood down his lip. So just up to the camera. Yeah, it's got a bit of blood that's gone down on his lip, and it's a bit spotty up there. So wow, Kevin Smith, dude, what are you trying to say, mate? You're Kevin. I don't know if you're a regular here or not, but Chris, can you look after that for me, please? Because my hands are covered with oil at the moment. Would really appreciate it if you could just drop this fella out of the chat, please. Thank you. A little bit of a timeout there for you, Kevin, but thanks very much for coming on to our stream, giving us a bit of entertainment. Thank you very much. Alrighty, now I don't know how long I should be waiting. It's still kind of softish. Do we dare try and demold, folks? Now, if this doesn't work, I'm not going to get upset or anything like that, so you don't have to feel bad about it if the cap gets damaged, because I'm just seeing there's a whole bunch of oil on the table there, so I'm definitely have to give my table surface a good clean at the end of this. What do you reckon? Should we try a demold? Let's try a demold. Alright, so I've got my Allen key through it, and I'm going to do it off the table because obviously I got all these liquids in the table, and if it hits any of those containers, it's going to be all bad. So, 3, 2, 1, push. Oh, came out really easily. Wow, that's awesome. Look at that. Like, focus. Look how clean that is. Came out beautifully. So that's definitely a really positive result for the flaxseed oil. I'm really stoked with that. The only downside is it took my bloody tape with it. So I taped the sides, and the tape is now part of the resin. Oh well. Now of course I have to change Allen keys because the Synth 2 uses a smaller hole. So let's see how successful this one's going to come out. So 3, 2, 1. Oh, okay. That was a really loud snap. But you know what? I think that was actually okay. So this is what's happened. It's gone and pulled out those chunks, but focus. The actual crucifix is preserved. So I'm good with that, actually. So the first half has passed the test. Obviously that will need to be cleaned up, which is easy to do. I'm going to do that so there's a little bit more time for the actual resin to firm up before I try and take it off the actual mold. But I was going to cut that off, but look at that. It just peels right off because it's still soft. So that's cool. And practically nothing of note to clean off this stem. Wow. So the flaxseed is looking very positive. Now, of course, with these channels here, those bits broke off, but these are still there, so I need to clean them up before I can demold as well. Try not to stab myself. Maybe, Andrew, they were a Terry Pratchett fan and we're all just floating on the back of the great Tuanthin instead. And there's nothing wrong with that, if we were. Very nice and clean. Alrighty, now comes the moment, the momentous of truthus. I'm gonna try and... It's very soft, so I could wait for it, but I'm going to be adventurous and say no. We're just going to trim. Turtles all the way down. I love Terry Pratchett books for most part. I don't know if any of you guys read Terry Pratchett, read Terry Pratchett. Tiffany Aching and the Guards series and the Witches, they're sort of some of my favorites. I'm not really a fan of the Rincewind Wizards series so much. I am sad though that he didn't have any opportunity to write more about Moist von Lipwig as well, because I really enjoyed both Going Postal and Making Money. Fantastic books those were. Great read, I think, regardless of, you know, your age. Alright, so that's not coming out easily off the stem, but the trick to that is you can push it out in the middle, and that's a bit small. I'm going to see if I can get a slightly larger one so it supports all of it. Mudkip Slaps. I bought my synth from Tech Keys, which is where they actually sell them. They actually still have 2.0s for sale as far as I'm aware of. So if you wanted to head over and get one, I think you should have no problems whatsoever. They are about $100 US for the synths, but that does, I think, include free shipping anywhere in the world from recollection. So now I am in no way whatsoever affiliated with Tech Keys, not sponsored by them, not paid by them, not endorsed by them. That's unfortunately the only place to get a synth. So for that, just a quick pop in with that, and there she be. Now let's have a look at how bad the bubbling is. And it looks clean, dude. Wow, I'm so happy with that. Look how minimal the actual bubbling is on that. That's awesome. Love it. Alrighty, let's try and clean up this second one and see if we get the same results. Alright, so let's try and get in under this surface, and it's coming up pretty good. Breaking off all these sprue points. Yoo-hoo! There's some very small bubbles, very fine micro bubbles there, but that's typically related to mixing. So I always anticipate bubbles there, and if I was using a pressure pot, I would definitely be able to get rid of those. So okay, so I've just pulled that main chunk out, and you can see down there there's still a bit more to clean up, so we're just going to try and, whoa, almost got assaulted by a bit of polyurethane there. And this is why you wear safety glasses. I had some stuff in my eye ages ago when I was doing renovations for our apartment after we bought it, and that was, I was wearing glasses. I was wearing safety glasses, but what had happened was I was chipping some tile in the laundry, and the actual piece of tile that broke off, it came up, it hit the wall, and then it must have bounced off somewhere behind me, and it came in and hit the inside edge of the glasses and then bounced into my eye. And man, that thing bugged me for months before it finally worked its way out. So I went and saw a optometrist about it, and they couldn't find it and locate it to try and flush it out, and they were just like, yeah, no, there's not much we can do about it. It's just gonna have to come out by itself. So always be careful when you're working with things that have potential to cop you in the eye. All right, don't know why I just put that down. Now we're just going to crimp the, well, not crimp, but we'll try and lift the edges. Just got to find a good point to be able to do this. Get it in on the corner there. There we go. So I'm just cutting where these sprues are. You can see it's starting to lift anyway, but this helps me later because then I can always polish those sprue points a little bit easier, rather than trying to trim it without any guidance. And look at that just came off beautiful. Absolute beautiful. So once again, some very small bubbles, and we'll see if the focus will come into play and show you these bubbles this time. Way, focus. Why you no focus? Not enough contrast for you? There we go. So see how there's those three bubbles up the top there? They're the kind of micro bubbles that I'm talking about. So, and you can see the surface pitting on that. Some of those are micro bubbles, and some of those are probably related to the flax oil. But that, I think, is a success. Flax oil is a win. So if you don't have expensive release agents available to you, and you're willing to get yourself some flax oil, even though it's expired, it's 2 years past its best before date. It has been sitting in the fridge. It does a wonderful job, and as I'm punching out these sprues, they're just popping out like a charm. Look at that, just pop straight through. Piece of cake. Loving it. And you know what? It is so much easier and so much faster than using the Vaseline. It's more messy though. So there's the payoff. It's faster, but be prepared to make a lot more of a mess. Alright, so we're going to go with turquoise this time. Now, are we just going with a turquoise mustache, or do you want some facial stripy features, or what are we thinking? Truffle oil. Oh man, that's some very rich keycaps. Maybe that's why some of those artisan keycaps sell for like $800, Andrew, because you got to take into account truffle oil. I'd believe it. It's probably also why they're so addictive, right? Because people get their keycaps and they smell the truffle oil and they're just like, oh man, this keycap must have. So this particular one, the 1.0, the actual polyurethane is sticking a bit to the surface. The actual surface treatment on this is not as smooth as the 2.0. So it's not surprising, and normally whenever I do casts on this anyway, it will form a film on it. So that's pretty normal. Nothing out of the ordinary in that regard. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm just scraping these bits off into the bin. So alright, and that's kind of ready to go to the next round. Hey, Outrage Pudding, not a problem. Head to bed, get some good sleep, and I hope you have a great day tomorrow. So, yeah, if I have any trouble, I guess I'll just have to take my gloves off and put down the band hammer myself. But thank you very much for helping. Purple mustache and turquoise face. All right, we'll give that a try. Purple mustache and a turquoise face. Now, this one cleaned up beautifully, and you can actually still see there's a bit of sheen, which means the oil from before is still on it. So that's kind of really positive. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to give it a full dunk like I did before. I just want to see potentially how many kind of applications before we get into trouble. But I will use this oiled cloth from before to give it a refresh and a redistribution of the oil, because I would anticipate that the surface coating doesn't actually need to be very thick or very heavy. I suppose the real issue is how much coating is inside the actual center stem hole. But what I will do though is I will actually dip the crucifixes in, because they will matter. So it's just sort of oil the 1.2, although it doesn't look like it's got as much of a sheen compared to the 2. So we'll see how badly it gets stuck and what that results in. Mud Kip Slaps, would you recommend a GH60 for a first build? It's funny you say that, because my first build that I ever did was a GH60. So yes, I highly recommend it, because all you need to do is plate, switches through a plate, solder switches to PCB, screw into a case, if you want to do that. So 100% easy build, very sort of low maintenance build. Very little can go wrong, unless if you get a bad PCB. So yes, definitely would recommend. Okay, so here's the crucifix. Just going to give that a light dip, and once again, let's clean off the excess. Give the sides a bit of a wipe down with this oily rag. Which seemed to work pretty good. I must say I was very impressed with that last run, so hopefully turquoise face run will do just as well, if not better. We can hope, we can hope. Diamond molds. The heck are you doing with diamond molds? That's a bit firm. I suppose you could always use diamond molds to you know, double shot PBT SA keycaps, right? That's the only reason why they're so expensive as sets. Now, the annoying part about this is I will need to retape this synth. You know what? I'm just going to have to make my scissors oily, and I'll have to wash them later. Just cutting some tape. Now, we've been talking about this on the podcast for ages and ages and ages, and it still hasn't happened yet. But yes, we are still thinking about Patreon. So I do want to remind people to let us know your thoughts and suggestions for Patreon if you're interested in supporting a Patreon. It's obviously not absolutely necessary, and now that that bit of tape's bloody useless, it's not even sticking. And now that we've got Idea 23 currently sponsoring us, you know, some of our costs have certainly been assisted by that. So, you know, it's not an absolute necessity, but it obviously helps us for future plans. You know, and it not only says that people appreciate what we do, and it's kind of like a small way of rewarding us and giving us a bit of flexibility to either, you know, get more things to review or give away and things like that on the show. So if you do have any thoughts about what you might want as rewards for a Patreon campaign, would love to hear about it. Now, Chris, our self-proclaimed #1 fan, has been really good with some suggestions and things, and you know, things like getting better equipment in terms of goal setting, right? Because obviously you want goal setting. So, you know, the funds would go towards like upgrading microphones, or, you know, a massive stretch kind of goal would be to get enough for me to be able to travel to a US meetup kind of thing. But they're really big, expensive goals in some aspects, whereas smaller goals might be, you know, being able to fund like the costs to get like a group buy happening for this, that, and the other, etc., etc. So they're just things to think about if anybody had interest in doing that. Alrighty, so they're all prepped. It's time to get on to the next color. So we're going to have to do the colors in sort of 2 lots. Now we want a purple mustache and turquoise face. Purple mustache and turquoise face. Purples, I have bright purple. I have a magenta somewhere, which is technically a purple. If I can find it. I have and I think that's the only 2 purples. Aztec green, lime, Kelly green, and that's black. Yeah. So I've got magenta and I've got bright purple. Do we have a preference? The magenta is a much lighter color, and you'll have to remember all these colors are going to be diluted by the white from the actual polyurethane. So let me know, bright purple or magenta. Now that should have firmed up, so I should be able to mix cleanly in that without any issues. Yep, it has. Down to 4 people, but that's alright. I was expecting 0, so 4 is better than nothing. Bright purple is your vote. Nobody else has said anything, so bright purple wins. You're absolutely on the ball today, Andrew. You're absolutely smashing it with your first in by the post. So, well, Dr. Doomapple has concurred. Bright purple it is. So, let's just get a drop in. 1 drop. Because this stuff is super potent. Magenta would make a lighter palette, so it would look better in your opinion. Unfortunately, the bright purple already shot the magenta cowboy. So let's go with 1 drop of each side, and that's 1 drop. Let's pre-mix that bright purple. All right, and And then the other side, get rid of some of the excess on the outside of that, and 1 drop. Mix that bright purple. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to set up head cam, but that's alright, because see how we go. We might do more of these, and we'll have an opportunity to put head cam up later. Alrighty, so try and do that so it's within view. Try and get some of that laid down first. So this is actually going to be a triple shot keycap if I'm going to be doing the turquoise, because like I said, I can't really do the full shot in solid turquoise because the risk of bubbles is quite high in doing that. So I'm going to have to do like a very thin layer of the turquoise color and then shot the rest of the actual keycap in the white. Now, because I run my caps in their creation as very low profile, there is actually not a lot of depth that I can work with before the inside of the synth will be affected by the shot. So that's just something to be aware of. So I don't know how this turquoise is going to turn out, but we're going to give it a try anyway and see. Okay? So I'm just going to fill in all of these visible lines. Now, the whole point of me making these keycaps is, of course, to raise money for Movember, and Movember is coming up. So, you know, hopefully I'll be able to have these ready and I can do a charity sale for these. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to sell them this year because it depends on how many I can make. Yeah, Movember as an event is all about raising funds to promote and increase visibility of men's health. Men's health, depression, you know, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, all of these kind of things that a lot of guys just will not talk about because guys don't talk about these kind of things, right? Elephant in the room needs to be addressed. So, you know, if you believe in men's health because you got a father, a brother, an uncle, a mate, then the Movember Foundation and the good work that they do is all about helping these causes. So, and they're all over the world now. Many years ago when they first started, it was a very small local thing, but now Movember is an international sensation where they have funded millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of research in all sorts of different projects around the world. So you can always just go and check out Movember and see what they do in your country, and if you want to support that, by all means, they would love and appreciate it, and so would I. Now, you don't actually have to grow a mustache yourself to be involved in Movember. You can just fundraise, you can donate, but at the same time, you can create a team and whatnot if you really wanted to, or you can join our team, my team, when I have the event set up. And even most sisters can come along with either, well, if you are genetically inclined, with your own mustache, or even if it's just a bit of a cardboard or paper mustache to help along with the worthy cause. And if you are of an alternative gender that identifies male, that's okay too. Even though biologically some of the things that the Movember Foundation works towards will not affect you. If you are biologically male and you're affected with, you know, identifying with another gender, then you should probably still think about supporting Movember, because biologically some of these things will affect you regardless of your, you know, your particular choice in identification. So yeah, it's just something to be aware of and think about. And obviously this year I've been very proactive in trying to get this happening a lot earlier than before, simply because, you know, I knew I was going to be busy with the baby and just life in general. So yeah, I do appreciate, of course, everyone supporting that when they can, however they can. So there's the actual two halves of the mustache. That has now started to gel, because you can see that it's sort of leaving lines in the trace, which is alright. So we're going to just clean that off a little bit. Alrighty, so the next one is going to be obviously the turquoise. We're going to go in the other corner because we can. These lids are very tight. Need a bit of grip support on it to get that open. Now it seems like the dropper on this one's not working very well at all. Might have lost suction, but that's okay because I can still contact drop. There we go. So I've got a patch of, yes, good cause. I am going to sell these caps for Movember. So last year I'd asked Cosmosis from Keycaps if he wanted to get involved, and the two of us did a bunch of caps, and then we sold them and raised quite a good amount of money for Movember. So alright, now this time I'm going to be trying to coat everything lightly. So we're going to go with probably a couple more drops. I'm going to say probably 3 drops. So 1, 2, 3, because that'll actually end up being 6 drops in total once it's all mixed in. I kind of have to wait for it to, well, gel up a little bit in a sense, because otherwise the surface of the actual sculpt is quite hydrophobic. So it's just going to run everywhere. So we'll see how it goes anyway. And so let's go with 3 drops on this side. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now let's do the mixing. It's quite a lovely color. I like the turquoise. It's very popular. Now I've gone and done it, haven't I? I've put them on top of the flax oil. That's alright. My favorite switch is clicky switches. I've been using clickies a long time, but at the moment I've got some Kale Box Whites that I'm going to probably be trying in the Delta Split very soon. So we'll see if my opinion will change anytime soon or not. So see how I'm kind of smearing that? Well, you're probably not really seeing it very well, but because it's still quite runny, it's not adhering and it's just pooling a little bit. So it's going to be pulling away a bit until it thickens up and starts to stick. Still have a bit of leeway and time to play with it once it's doing that before it fully gels up, thanks to the low volume that we're working with. The other thing that you got to be careful of course, is once you're playing with this, you don't want too much color mixing with previously laid down colors if they haven't fully gelled and firmed. So it's just something to be aware of and to consider it. I am not cooking meth S-Sinks, but it is that very Heisenberg blue, isn't it? I am actually a degree qualified chemical engineer, so I wouldn't say that I'm into doing these kind of chemical reactions of such dubious nature, but to be honest, I haven't actually learnt any of those kind of reactions, because organic chemistry, I hate organic chemistry. Organic chemists out there would probably be gasping, but I hate organic chemistry. That's just a personal preference. Obviously, physical chemistry is fine. Organic chemistry sucks. Now, the tricky part is doing the sidewalls, because it's just going to start running down. Yeah, it's starting to stick a bit, so that's good. But you know what? That's part of the expressionism of these caps, isn't it? And this is called art. Art. Not that we... Well, you could technically run a gallery, I suppose, and put keycaps in displays and have overhead projectors of keycaps. And then people would wander around and look at these tiny, tiny little pieces of sculpted and casted art and painted art. Things like what Keypress Graphics does in Melbourne here in Australia. And then I suppose if it actually went to auction, you'd probably actually be able to raise a reasonable amount of money, I reckon, at a gallery of keycaps. I don't know if anyone's particularly game to set one up though, because obviously the costs of doing a gallery session and then hiring an auctioneer is quite expensive. But if someone's game and there's a lot of artisan keycaps available, well, could be a thing. Unless if it's like a deceased estate of like a well-known keycap collector or something like that. Who knows? Maybe in 20 or 30 years time, as some of the older ones amongst us start to peter off, it might actually happen. They'll be like, what is this? And it'll be like, that's Grandpappy's keycap collection. He worked real hard to get that original clack. Or that Cosmo. He would sit in the corner and stare at it for days. I don't know why I'm talking with a hick accent, but I'm just thinking of like the movie Idiosyncrasy or something where everything just degenerates. And then just going to be sitting around watching, ow, ouch my balls or whatever it was. Oh my balls. Alright, so look at that. Let me hold one up. So we've got turquoise applied to everything else, and then there's the purple. So let's get everything ready for the next stage. Next stage. So let's clean that off. Those things have all been oiled. It's been taped. So that's all well and good. It's pretty cool. And we will go with, once again, 6 mils. So let's squeeze that out. And let's pull up 3 mils. It's pretty good. You don't think artisans will be valued in the future? Passing trend. Well, that's the thing, right? It's art. It's art and it's collectibles. So, you know, it might be a passing trend right now, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It might fall out of fashion, but then the people who've invested money in it, they'll probably still keep them rather than getting rid of them, since they've paid money for it. And then somebody else looking for a niche thing or vintage things might come across them and go, hey, check it out. Back in the early 2010s, there was these things called artisan keycaps. We don't use mechanical keyboards anymore, you know, because we have these fandangled VR thingamadoobie, but this was indicative of this era gone by. And they're really hard to find because they're all handcrafted, blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly it could become a collectible again in a vintage retro kind of way. So it's really hard to say. It's really no different to fashion where, you know, I went and got some glasses the other day. Well, I went and ordered some glasses yesterday, and fat, thick rims are coming back into fashion again. And I hate them. So it's really hard to find glasses that I like in terms of the frame because I don't want fat, thick rims. But that's what the fashion is. And it's like bell bottoms on jeans and stuff. You know, it all comes around. It's all cyclic. So never know when artisan keycaps fall out and back in again. Hey, Joseph Clark. Why do I seem to stream when you are in class? Are you in Australia? Because if you're in class overseas in a different country, that's a weird time to be having class. But if you're in Australia, well, that's unfortunate because that's usually when I'm in daytime hours. Late afternoon and sort of early evening hours is hard for me to stream simply because of the baby being at home. I do try and stream in the afternoons on the weekend if possible in Australia because that's usually when my daughter has her nap. But these days she's tending to have less and less naps. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame because it means less free time for my wife and I to actually get other things done rather than having to watch out for her and her antics. So I'm furiously mixing here, trying to mix without raising too many bubbles. Now you'll notice I'm using the very thin probe because it means I am generating much less turbulence when I do my mixing. If I was using a paddle pop stick to mix, the leading edge, that hard edge of the paddle pop, actually causes the swirls behind it, the turbulence behind that edge, and it actually pulls in more air bubbles. So by having a small, well-rounded object as my mixing stick, I'm actually generating less turbulence within the fluid, so I'm able to get much better results in terms of not pulling in bubbles. So at the moment, it looks pretty mixed. I'm not seeing any more trails, which is really good. The other thing that really helps also with bubbles is if I pour early while it's still relatively liquid and I overfill, which is kind of like what I did before, so I take it all the way up to the top, then it allows bubbles to come out into the actual section that pops out of the synth into the stems and sprues, so they don't get trapped inside. I'll take that right up and then into the next mold. Come on. I know there's still more resin in there. This one will definitely look interesting. I just hope it'll demold successfully because I didn't dip these back in to the flaxseed oil. So it's starting to gel now, which is to be expected because it's been a couple of minutes since I started the mixing part. And what that does mean is I need to get these in. So make sure that's the correct orientation. That's the top side there. Push that out, and that's the top side there. Push that out. There we go. Get it into the mold. Alright, and you can see that, well, there's some bubbles. Well, maybe not so easily, but I'll try and bring that up. You can, if it'll focus. Yeah, so you can see bubbles on that top left one. For example, they've been pushed out of the actual center cavity into the sprues, which is exactly the kind of behavior I want it to have, because that way they won't be inside the actual keycap. Now, let's go with our stem. Down tight, and then down and tight. There we go. Now we play the waiting game again. S-Inks, how durable are resin cast keycaps? Can they handle heavy-handed daily use? Yes. So depending on the resin, like this is polyurethane. If you think about polyurethane, it's what they make kitchen countertops out of. Polyurethane's, used in a lot of wide range applications. So definitely you can get daily use out of it. The only things that you kind of have to be concerned about is like particles oils and things like that that are going to wear on keycaps. No different to, say, really cheap ABS keycaps. In terms of artisan features, though, over time, naturally, they will soften and they will degrade if you're constantly typing and pressing on them. But if you're talking about casted blanks, I haven't heard anything from the community about people who've used it, casted blanks for gamer sets having any issues. So, but you know, it's only been a couple of years, and depending on how much people are typing, hammering away on it, you may or may not actually see those effects anytime soon. Now, Joseph asked, does anyone know where to buy print vinyl designs, etc.? That's plain patterns like carbon and marble. Ooh, okay. I do not, unfortunately. Sorry, I can't help you there because it's not something that I really look into, but maybe somebody here in the channel might actually have an idea about that. That would be pretty cool if they could help you with that. So, yeah, just having a look at these ones again. They look pretty good. Now, they're still a little bit soft, but I would expect over the next 24 hours that they'll actually firm up, which is pretty normal. These two ones over here that I did earlier. Okay, so turquoise and purple is done. It's done, 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 done. Done like a chicken dinner. Okay, so it's starting to micelle up already very quickly on this one. So you can see it's starting to edge up white just on the corners here. Whereas the 2.0, I'm not seeing any color. Look at that, that's starting to creep and move very quickly now. You can see it's got that whiteness forming around the edges there. It's pretty cool. Whereas nothing is quite yet happening on the 2.0. Whew. So S-Ink, where did you get these CNC plates? This is what is called the synth. Synth with a dollar mark instead of the S. You can Google it, or you can go to Tech Keys. Just look up Tech Keys website, and they have them there. They're $1. Sorry, $1. I wish they were $1. They're $100 per set. So you get the actual base, which is the sculpting platform, and you get the stem insert as well as part of that. And that includes shipping around the world. And like I said earlier, I am not affiliated or sponsored or endorsed by Tech Keys or Hungerwork Studio, who developed these in conjunction with people from Tech Keys. So I got the 1.2 version ages ago, and I really liked it. So when they came out with the 2.0, I jumped on that as well. And so far, so good. It's been working pretty well. It's a little bit light, though, in terms of mass weight, which is probably the only major issue I have with it. Other than that, it works exactly the same. I mean, it's aluminium, so it's lighter. I know that one of the guys on the Australian Mech Keys Discord actually scratched his, like, he gouged it when he was sculpting because he slipped and went with a metal tool. But it's aluminium, so you can kind of expect it's not as stiff, as scratch resistant compared to the steel one, which is this one over here. Hey, we're back up to 6. Pretty cool. So we're an hour and 40 in, and we're on our second set after having everything set up, which is pretty cool. For those who've just joined us, we're using flaxseed oil as our release agent, and it's 2-part polyurethane resin, which turns out white like in here, and we're using PSTF dyes in small amounts and mixing them so that we can add a bit of color without excessive bubbling. Just using Allen keys to pop out stuff, as well as pushing things out of the molds. Bit of chucks for cleaning. Yeah, and then of course nitrile gloves for your own personal protection. Tissue paper, toilet paper, masking tape, nothing special really. And so there we go, it's starting to turn white on the 2.0 as well. And like we've seen before, it's going to be quite soft. Yep, it's still quite soft. So we're going to probably have to wait a little while before they get firm enough to actually pop them off. Whew, just going to recline back a little bit and chill. Anybody got plans for the weekend, even though it's only a Monday for you guys in the US and Tuesday in Australia? How many of these am I making? S-inks, I'm going to make quite a few. Probably until I run out of resin in these, and then I might call it, because I'm actually doing these for Movember. So the more that I make, the more that I can offer for people to buy to fundraise for Movember this year. So that's where we're at. Melbourne Met Keys meetup this weekend. Yes, 26th. I don't live in Melbourne, so I can't go. I don't have the available funds like Sarah does to fly to Melbourne and stay in an Airbnb to turn up to the meet. But you know what? That's okay, because there's already heaps of really cool people down in Melbourne, which should be fantastic. It's the third meetup. It's the third meetup in Melbourne this year already. Sydney's had one. Brisbane's had none. Perth's had one as well, from what I remember. Yeah, so hype. Should be good. Should be good. It's almost like it looks like PVA glue, and when it's all soft before it's gone hard and starts to turn translucent again, and you can sort of poke it, that's what it kind of feels like and looks like at the moment to me. So PVA glue. Oh, my fingers are going to be so wrinkled and pruned under these gloves. I can already feel it, because they don't let moisture and sweat out. So at some point I should probably peel them off and let them breathe. Otherwise I'm going to get really manky fingertips. I used to wear gloves for hours on a time when I was working, and the guys in the lab told me to get around doing that is cotton gloves. So they actually got me a pair in the lab where you have cotton gloves and then you put the latex or nitrile gloves on top of the cotton gloves, and so the cotton actually wicks away the moisture, stops your fingers from pruning, and then you just have it running past the edge of the glove and it can sort of just dissipate a lot of that moisture. The only downside though is you lose a lot of sensitivity because you're increasing the layers. So yeah. S-inks, I don't advertise my live streams because a lot of this is just impromptu. Yeah, I could just chuck a link in, but at the same time somebody else could chuck a link in if they really wanted to share it. It's great that it's actually on your front page of YouTube, which is fantastic. I don't advertise only because, as you can see, we're going almost into 2 hours now, and I've only casted 2 keycaps. It's quite a long process. It's quite an arduous process, and there's a lot of downtime and wait time, which means I don't want a lot of people coming along and going, what is this crap? Why am I watching this? If it's like an active promoted link. So that's, I kind of feel bad about trying to sucker people into watching a stream that's actually got a lot of wait time. That's one of the reasons why I don't really advertise my live streams. With the building, with the soldering, that kind of thing, similarly so in that I don't know when I'm doing them, I don't schedule them, and that way it makes it hard for me to pre-schedule, especially because interruptions with life can get in the way. And I could be halfway through soldering and then something happens, I've got to stop. Then I don't want to disappoint people with breaking a stream. Whereas other people, if they've got the ability to dedicate that block of time 100%, then that really works for them, and they have set scheduled times, especially gamers, because they're like, well, you know, I'm going to play this game for this period of time. So yeah. The last meetup was somehow close, 400 kilometers away, held on a Monday. Well, that's a very challenging distance to go for a meetup, 400 kilometers away. Well, Melbourne's only like 900 kilometers away from me, so it's not like I couldn't go to the Melbourne meetup. It's only 10 hours drive, right? Okay, so this one's quite firm now. It's still dentable soft, whereas this one's push soft. So we'll give it a few more minutes before we try and demold it. Monday. Yeah, I don't know why you want to hold a meetup on a Monday. When I organized the Sydney meetup, I had actually asked people for the right dates that would be most open to people. because there was university holidays and school holidays, so I found the date that had the best overlap, and then that's when I booked it. So yeah, wanted to make it a Saturday as well, which would give people, you know, a Sunday to recover if they had to travel a bit, or you know, if they had other plans for the rest of the weekend and they didn't want to stay late, or this, that, and the other. You know what? I'm going to can I deglove without... Is this going to let me? Yeah. I'm going to try and deglove carefully and have a drink of water, because doing all this talking is making me thirsty. Yeah. Try not to spill this all over me. Ah, SI, man, dude, should have said so. The SMKs. I pulled them out of the box, and I was like, they are an ugly looking switch. The base of the switch is ugly. The click actually is quite soft by comparison. It feels very light, so it'll be interesting. I haven't put them into the plate or board, so I don't know what they feel like en masse yet. But because I had from Mendez from Tay Keyboards the Kale Box Whites, and I had them side by side and I was clicking them, and my wife was just like, they sound so different. And it's true, because the Kale Box Whites are very crisp and click, whereas the SMKs just don't hold up to it. But yeah, the bases on those are just really ugly looking. But you know what? It's a switch. It's not meant to be pretty looking if it's underneath. This says, William Wallace and freedom. You can take my people, but you can never take my freedom. It's wow, look at that. It's like a Smurf. That's you guys asked for it in this color scheme. The purple came out alright. It's quite, they call it a bright purple, but it's actually quite dark, isn't it? I didn't manage to get it all the way to the edges either, so it means you can see whiteness around, because I didn't want to try and color mix the turquoise with the purple too much. So there's a bit of whiteness happening around there. But you know what? That's okay. It's different. It's not bad looking. It's not bad looking at all. Alright, so let's see. Is it good enough to pop? That one is. That one's still a little bit soft. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off the 1.2. Let's pop out the 1.2 completely. We'll cut and trim it as well. And that'll give it time for the 2.0 to actually come good. Hopefully. Let's see how it goes. Alright, so that actually came out really easy. Again, super clean. Very pleased with how this flax oil method is turning out. Very pleased. So, let's clean up over the bin. Alrighty, so now we can trim from the sprues. It's still quite soft, so it's easy to trim. Look at that, just working pretty easily. And off she comes. And look at that. Wow, beautiful. Gravity cast, no pressure pot, and well, I don't know if it's focusing very well, but look at that. It's good. No major bubbles. There's a couple of bubbles on this inside edge here, but you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So I just clean this one up, and then we can get on to the 2.0. Now while I'm doing this, you guys can have a think about what your next color combo is that you want. No color preferences yet? Alrighty, so that one's relatively clean. What I will do though is I think I'm going to give that a fresh dunk. Emerald green with jet black. Okay, so I'll give you a fresh dunk into that. So you want emerald green for the mustache, or do you want jet black for the mustache and emerald green for the base? It's come out nice and clean again. And just like before, it's actually it's shattered part of that, which is okay. Nearly stabbed myself there with my cutting tool. Would not have been pleasant. Hey, no worries, Andrew. Thanks very much for coming along. I hope you had a bit of fun and enjoyed, and I'll catch you around. Emerald green for the stash. Alright, sounds good, Dr. Doomapple. We're going to go with emerald green for the stash. Alrighty, so that one cleaned up pretty nicely on the back. Crucifix is there, and that's trim. That one trimmed at a funny angle, but that's okay. It's an artisan keycap. It feels pretty tight. It's not lifting like it was before, which is making me think that probably for this one it's going to definitely need a re-grease. So we'll see if it will actually come out cleanly or not. If it doesn't, then we'll know that the 2.0 definitely needs a re-grease after every cap made. Whereas the 1.2 actually came out pretty well without needing that re-grease for the second one. Alright, so it's not really forthcoming. I'll make sure I've cut all of these. Alright, so it looks like I'm going to have to give it a push. Hopefully I won't damage the stem too much doing this. Ooh. No, I'm putting a bit of force into it and it doesn't want to come out. So it looks like the 2.0 definitely will want a re-grease for each iteration. Well, it's good to know. That's the reason why we do these kind of things. Because yeah, got to know these kind of things when we're working with these kind of tools. Now, making sure I'm cutting that all the way down. It didn't sound like I managed to cut through it cleanly as well. There we go. Maybe that'll come out a little bit easier now. Alrighty. Let's try that again. Oh, wow, that was really tight. It doesn't look like there was any sort of crazy amount of bubbles, but what I've managed to do in the process though is I've actually deformed the stem, which is obviously not ideal, at all. So just seeing if I can Probably shouldn't do this, but you know what? There's no real harm because if it didn't work, it's not going to work anyway. So I've just gone and mounted it onto a switch, as you can see, and that will just help it reform the crucifix after I'd flattened it a little bit trying to push it out. So you can kind of see there's a bit of damage on that from the Allen key pushing on it, but I've managed to get it onto this this stem. So there we go, salvaged. Awesome. Alright, so what that does say is this definitely wants a full re-grease, and you'll see how much more of it was actually sticking compared to before. So I'm going to take that out and I'm going to let it drip down on that. And then I'm going to clean up this one before we go again. I suppose for also consideration SI is that live streams are kind of almost rewardish, in that if you're subscribed to the channel and you have your notifications set up right for live streams, it'll send you an email and tell you that I'm live streaming. Whereas if you're not subscribed and you're relying on you know, people posting links and you're interested in seeing live streams, well, then I suppose it should give you consideration on if you want to subscribe, because you might miss out on interacting in live streams. So, I mean, it's a strange way of thinking about it if you really want to argue the point, but it's one way to look at it, I suppose. It encourages people to subscribe. These sprue bits are also starting to get hard to punch out too, which means I probably need to do a more extensive dunk, for a better word, to get them lubricated inside. I don't know what's stopping this one from coming out though. Why are you so stubborn? Come on, get out. Ah, stabbed myself with a blunt tool. That's never pleasant. There we go. Whew, that hurt. Glad it wasn't a sharp one. Okay, so I've got to do a bit of light scraping just to get rid of all this excess crap that's on the side of my mold piece here, the synth. I don't want to do it over the desk simply because all these particles are just going to be all over the desk, not in the bin, and contaminate the oil and the resin containers and all that kind of crap. So, alright. So, let's give that another dunk. Whoop. Bloop. And I guess I should probably give this one a proper dunk then on the other side as well, in case it too is not hold up so well. There we go. So let that drip out and off. Out and off as well. Alrighty. So starting to get hungry. What's the time, folks? I've been gone for 2 hours now, so I think what is it? It's 20 to 12. 20 to 12. It's almost lunchtime. been up since about 6:30. It's gonna be a long day. Alright, so let's get some of that excess off. I suppose if you were using a proper release agent and it was a dippable type, it'd be quite thin, so not as thick, even though that this flaxseed oil is quite thin already. Then it would allow you to, yeah, dip it in, pull it out, shake it off, and away you go, maybe? I don't know. Just a thought. But what it is saying at least is you don't have to necessarily go out and get some really expensive materials. Not that I know how much this flaxseed oil costs, because my wife was the one who bought it for kitchen purposes. But rather than me going out and getting some more materials to play with, I can just do this, which is pretty cool. It's always good to be able to find alternative uses for resources. So there we go. Now I've got to degrease my fingers somewhat a little bit. At least flaxseed oil is not hazardous to one's health. So let's prep the stem, quick dip, and then we rub it all down. Rub, 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 rub. Now to get those bits out from there. Try and get that. The chat's being pretty quiet, but you know, it's not much to say, right? Just chilling out, a bit of company on the side, whatever it is else that you're doing today. Now I've got to clean this off and then put some tape on it before I dunk the tip of that in. The tape. The tape. Yoop. Come on. There we go. Tape on one side. And then tape on the other side. And hopefully that will be all good. Now, if you're regulars for our podcast, which you may or may not be, and that's fine, you can also let us know if there's anything in particular you'd like us to talk about. Because, you know, some weeks it's pretty quiet, it's pretty ordinary, it's pretty dry. So if there's actual special interest topics, then do let us know. Otherwise, we wouldn't know what you're interested in. So you get to hear about what you want to know about, and you know, we'd be more than happy to try and accommodate that. So let's just wick some of that away. Like I said, working with the oil is yeah, definitely messy. Okay, favorite places to buy stuff: China versus vendors. Right, I'll have to note that down. You can also PM me on Reddit. You can PM me on YouTube. You can leave us messages on our Facebook page, or you can email me at theboardpodcast@gmail.com. So Yeah. What are my thoughts on fake artisans on Taobao? As an artisan maker, it's kind of flattering that somebody's copying your work, but it's also really scummy at the same time because they're in it for the buck, right? Like, it's not that artisan makers aren't in it for money, but in order to actually make really any decent money, you've got to be making good quality products. But like anything that's fake and copies, it hurts the maker and it hurts the reputation as well. And it just shows the lack of really originality that these people have, who just parasites, really. Now, there's a difference between making copies if you're going to be just cloning stuff for your own private use. I know that's a hot topic, right? But when I say hot topic, I don't mean it's a current hot topic. It's more about it's a minefield, because, you know, if somebody has an artisan that you just can't afford, but then somebody is willing to make you a copy of it, well, if it's for your own private pleasure and it's never going to see a light of day, I personally don't have a beef about that. If you're going to put it on a board and it goes out somewhere, and this has happened before in the community, then people are going to get upset because it's like you're knocking that off. But if you're not making them to sell them, you're not making them and claiming that it's an original, that's where it starts to get into that gray zone. So there's my jet black. And there is the emerald green. Okay, the emerald green aisles. Now these should all have set by now. Yep, so you can see the nice color splashes that I end up with. So, emerald green mustache. We'll have to see how well it takes, or not take. So, a drop of the green. Yeah, exactly. Selling it it's pretty douchey, but it's no different to any other, I guess, clones out there. I'm gonna go with 2 drops. Pre-mix it. I don't know how well this is going to turn out, only because the black is actually quite overpowering. So I'm not going to use a lot of the black, so it'll probably turn out more of a grey rather than an actual solid black. But I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. Now the emerald green is actually quite a dark green, so it's not as vibrant. I think for terminal it probably would be closer towards like the lime green is the color that you might be looking at. So we'll just have to see how it goes. So 1, 2 drops. I do have fluoro lime, so that is probably going to be closer to what you might want for terminal. Alrighty. Oop, don't want to tilt that way. And start filling in the mustache. Trying to get that all in. Alrighty. Miami Nights. Which was that? We talked about that, didn't we, in the last episode? Not the filler episode, but the last one that Kevin was in, right? It doesn't have a lot of keycap compatibility in Miami Nights. Wasn't that one of the issues that Kevin had with it? At the far, the cap looks like a mullet. Well, I mean, it's kind of like a mullet for your face, isn't it? This kind of mo, the handlebar mo, the mauve. I think it was Cherry Profile GMK. Yeah. Alrighty. So let's just start packing a bit of colour in that. Sort that out with this other one. Starting to gel up now after a couple of minutes of working. Alrighty, so there we go. There's two emerald mustaches. I think the original group buy wasn't done by Originative, was it? It was done by something else, someone else, and that was the one that didn't make the MOQ. I don't know. I'm not 100% on that because it's not really a colorway that I was after, unlike my co-hosts' personal preferences on colors, but yeah. Just gonna wait for that to firm up before I get into putting down some black. Black. Just getting some of the excess, put it into another mold. Okay. Another piece of paper just to clean off. Orange and black stuff like carbon. Saw a set of Shishi and Orichis for 7. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's really expensive, eh, for the Shishi. Jet black. So jet black is quite strong. It's quite potent. 1 drop is probably going to be enough for most part. But we'll see. Now, before I did 3 drops, didn't I, on each? So let's do that again. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so Kevin loves the Miami colorway, and what he liked about the Miami Nights was the fact that it's a lot more subtle, and I do agree, just by having the legends and sort of that beigey background means it's not so glaringly bright and in your face that it's like this really bright colorway. So, you know, that said though, it's still not on my radar as a set that I would primarily like, because I'd prefer darker solid colors. But that's how it is, right? Personal preferences. That's why I like Chocolatier a lot, and Nautilus is quite nice because of the blue tones. Yeah. Dasher and Dancer were okay, but I just felt that didn't have as much highlight, whereas having Nautilus with the actual yellow was good just for the accent in it. Plus the profile, I mean, the delays for SA were just crazy through the roof, as we all know. So yeah. Right, now this jet black, seriously, it smells like squid ink. It may even be squid ink, I don't know. But time to lay down some of this black. It's pretty dark, even with that one drop. It's still quite liquid for the moment, which is alright, good to work with. I can sort of grab fat droplets of it and just get it in there. Alright, so that's enough for that one for the moment, and then let's get some into the other one. Like painting with resin. You could so totally do that, but you'd have to work fast, and your mistakes become pretty permanent too, since the resin, once it sets, that's it, it ain't gonna change. Alright, now it's starting to gel, so it's sticking to the walls a bit better, which means I can start to run around the edges a bit better. Hope that it's not going to mask up the green. Gotta work fast. Might have taken my time too long on this one. It's starting to get hard to work with now. It's starting to get less liquidy, so it means in terms of its smearing behavior, you'll see it's starting to lump up. It's not running as smoothly across surfaces. It's sticking really well, but for distribution purposes though, that's not so good. There's kind of like just this in-between phase where it's just this perfect consistency that you can work with, that it loses that phase very quickly as it transitions and it gels. So yeah, starting to really firm up now. Noting that, you know, the window for this is only about 3 minutes, so you've really got to get in there and set your colors where you want it, how you want it, because once it says no, I'm done playing with you. That's it. Okay, so that's green with a bit of a black rim on that. Green with a black rim on that. Just how it's going to be. Alright, let's clean that off. And then start getting myself ready for the next color, which is going to be the back clear base. The Novatouch. So if you can still get a Novatouch stock, I would say go for it, because for the price, well, okay, if you can get a stock Novatouch for its normal retail price, then it's not a bad keyboard if you like TKLs. For an entryway into Top Ray, it's pretty good, and plus you've got the sliders in it as well. People these days still hunt for Novatouch sliders. I have a full set of them, but I actually replaced my Novatouch sliders with the sliders I made as copies of the Novatouch sliders. Not that I intend to sell my Novatouch sliders, but it was more, you know, an entertainment for myself in seeing what I could cast and whatnot. The steel plate makes it fun because it's firm, it's stiff, it's got good sound, it's got weight, and it's nice in general. But in terms of the rest of the build quality, the keycaps on the Novatouch are abysmal. They're just these thin plastic ABS, very flimsy. Just don't like them at all. So if anything, if you're going to get a Novatouch, the first thing that you probably want to mod and customize is the keycaps. Just get rid of them and get another set. Other than that, it's a pretty decent board, so I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. I don't use it only because everybody knows, full size kind of guy, and my preference still for Top Ray is the Leopold. After swapping between the three and whatnot, I like the FC. I would love to try a 9800. The FC 9800, well, 980C, just for the form factor and the feel of that board as well. So yeah, if you can definitely get hold of a Novatouch at around what it used to sell for retail, then I would say by all means go for it. Trying to break off these overhang bits on my pouring container. You can see I've just gone and snapped that off, and you can sort of see the layers of each of those pores that have built up on top there, which is pretty cool. It's just going to develop more layers soon, isn't it? Okie dokie. There we go. Strip that all the way back. So it's just a clean corner tab again for ease of pour. So now I've just given that a bit of time to gel, so when I pour the actual white backing into it, it's not going to color mix and make all the colors swell and bleed. Move that back away. These are all ready to go, so it's time to start mixing the next batch. So 6 ml is a good amount for the 2 caps. So 3 ml of each. Get the meniscus down to the level. Just gotta wait for it to all pull down a bit. Alrighty, and then another 3 ml on this side. Okie dokie. Mix, mix, mix. Telos seem like a waste considering how smooth Gator and yellows are and there's no need for tactility. Well, Zeal products have a certain fan base to them. Whether they actually make a significant difference, if it's all in our heads, it's very hard to say without a easily measurable method of determining that. I know that, you know, Hata has got his really complicated rig for measuring force, but nobody's really yet been able to develop a really good way of feeling smoothness. And when I say smoothness, I'm talking about coefficients of friction, static and kinetic. When somebody does, though, that's when all of these things can be really laid to rest. How do my sliders compare to the stock Novatouch sliders? You might need a little bit of more clarification on what kind of characteristics you're trying to compare them against. Just for reference, I don't have any JTK sliders and I don't have any of the Taobao, those white ones that come with the O-rings, so I actually can't make any comparison comments about those items. Alright, so I've done quite a bit of mixing already. Most of the swirls seem to have gone, which is great. So it's time to pour out. Looks like some good pours there. Fairly even amount gone into each. Okay, let's clean that off. Into the bin that goes. Now let's identify the right orientation for these guys to go in. That way. Yep, and push. And that way, and we drop it in like it's hot. Push. Get our stems, and in it goes. Stems all the way in. And our stem all the way in. And then that bit of tape dislodged, so it's probably not going to be the best of angles on that one, but that's okay. You know what? It's a keycap for charity. Anyone who complains, well, they can just deal with it. In terms of smoothness, mine are a little bit rougher because they're cast, but you can smooth them out. So I have had people who've had my sliders that have actually polished them with very fine sort of polish cloth, and then they've actually lubed them and they work really well. They work really smooth. In terms of wobble, they're very similar, but mine can be inconsistent with wobble. And the reason is when you cast and there's flashing on it, the flashing, if you don't smooth it all the way down and whatnot, it can actually cause it to be quite stiff and not work properly because the channels that the actual slider slides in and out of is very tight. And when I say channels, I don't mean the stem, but the actual little feet that come out of the Novatouch slider. So because I clean them by hand off the flashing, sometimes I actually end up clipping a little bit more than I need to, or I should have, which causes it to have a bit more wobble. So, but that's, you know, because it's hand casted, it's hand cleaned, you know, it's that's the way it is. They're artisan sliders if you want to think about it that way. What's my favorite switch so far? Like, if I can only have one keyboard with one type of switch. Yeah, I'm going to say at the moment, it's still probably going to be a cherry or gator on green. They're very similar. People talk about smoothness, but I must have really dead fingertips because I don't actually feel a lot of the smoothness factors that people are talking about. Only by default as OEM caps, greens, because they're heavier and I like the quickie. So yeah, the whole Zeal debate, I've only ever had one Zeal, one Zelio, and it was in my switch tester that I lent to somebody who has not returned it. So I can't really make a lot of comparisons because I don't have a complete keyboard that has Zeals on it. I've seen pandas, I've heard about pandas a lot, and don't think I've got a panda in my switch assortment. No, I don't have a panda. I do have a Fosen though, so that's alright. And jailhouses. I do not have an Otemu purple. I've only tried an Otemu blue, which was from the pluggable TKL. So I don't know what the purples are like, and I've never jailhoused because it seemed like a lot of effort at the time. Woo. Almost hitting the 3-hour mark. What I think I'm going to do is once these ones are done and I've cleaned them and I've demolded them and all of that, I think I might actually end the stream. I still have heaps of resin here, but you know, I need to grab some lunch as well. So once I finish doing these, I'm going to say thanks very much for everyone for coming along and hanging out, because then I can go and have some lunch. I can come back and keep casting, which I probably won't live stream only because of the fact that it's just going to be much the same. So yeah, and I'm not going to eat my lunch here simply because of all these chems and stuff like that. Smoothness is placebo. In actual use, you won't notice. You can build a big macro pad with 1 million switches. You can certainly build a big macro pad with 1 million switches if you have all of the pins to actually do your array. So it's not out of the ordinary. You just need a controller that can handle it. So yeah, no reason why you couldn't at all. Made a pretty good dent in that, at least. What's that? 12. I've used 18 mil. I don't know how many mils these cups hold, but almost look like Jello cups. Could do like Jello shots or something like that in them. All right, so this one here, the Synth 1.2 is starting to gel. There's white happening there, but nothing yet on the 2.0. I wonder why that is, because they mix the same, but I pour that one first, and I wonder if that's part of the reason, or for some reason or other the actual stainless is causing it to be faster than the 2.0. It's an interesting question to ask. Scratchiness, eh? Retooled. The whole thing about scratchiness is it's very subjective, naturally, but over time, the more you use them, they should wear, right? And it really just comes down to the surface smoothness between the contacts that are wearing it, so the metal as well as on the actual prong arms, as well as the side channels of the housing. So the question then could be really to ask, can we retool the housing to make the experience smoother and not just the stems? Robert Fontaine, thanks very much for checking out the stream. How tough would it be to cast steno keys with cherry stems with these tools? I think it would be doable. The challenge, because of how steno keys are shaped, is overhangs. So if you had multi-part, perhaps. That's one way of doing it. Or alternatively, you could cast the tops separately and then the cherry stems separately, and then cast it as a third shot with a little bit of resin and plug them in together. That's another way of doing it. I don't have any steno keys. I've never seen steno keys in real life off a stenograph, so I actually don't know what the underside of the steno key looks like to be able to give a good indication of how well it would work with the synth, but that would definitely be interesting. You can use some 128 Typro keys for MX compatible stuff. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so you can definitely daisy chain, especially if you're using the I2C protocol, which is what the Let's Split V2 actually supports, and allows you to just keep daisy chaining a lot of objects. So yeah, it's definitely not impossible if you want a switch tester done that way. And I'd actually said this, I can't remember if I said it in a live stream or if I said it in a podcast, that you could set up the macro pad with all these different switches, so every switch that you hit, it would actually type out what switch type it was. And that way people trying it could plug it in and go, oh, that's really nice, and it would just be spamming whatever the switch type was. So at least you'd know what it was rather than trying to figure it out by its looks or its color or stems and that kind of thing. So yeah, cool bananas. So you can see it's definitely already whitened up now. It's still very soft, very soft. Definitely too soft to work with to pull out at the moment without it going all funky. So I'll give it a few more minutes. Man, my day off, and I'm working hard for the community, but I get to chill out with you cool people, so it's always nice. And of course, if you haven't gone to the Gleam IO competition for our 800 subscriber giveaway, please do, because you can have a chance to win a mug. September Ghosts, welcome to the stream. Thanks very much. Love the podcast. Quick question, how does resin affect the colors that you add? Do they tend to be muted? The answer is yes. So this polyurethane is a white base, so all the colors that I add to it actually get more pastel. It actually ends up more diluted by that actual white factor. So lighter colors get lighter, darker colors will also get lighter. The only way that you can kind of go around that is to just saturate more dye, but you run the risk of, once you get past a certain percentage of dye to resin, the resin won't react properly, and you can get incomplete curing, you can get softness, and that kind of stuff. So you do have to experiment around when you first start with your resins that you work with to get an understanding. For example, I use talcum powder in my clear resin to add opaqueness and milkiness to it, but you can't add more than 5% by volume weight, because if you go over that, it actually prevents the interaction of the part A to part B from forming properly, and you just end up with soft mush, and it's sticky and it's tacky and it's really horrible. So things like that are really important to take into consideration. Robert Fontaine, your link I don't think worked because the chat settings at the moment are designed to prevent spammage of undesired content. For those who were here earlier, we had an example of that, and Outrage Pudding was kind enough to be able to moderate for me. What you can do is you can post a link, but you have to break up the link and change it so that it's not recognized as a link. So, you know, put dot in square brackets and type DOT or something like that, and that will usually break it up. And then, yeah, I should be able to have a look at it later. Obviously, because I've got gloves on and it's been oily because I've been working on with the flaxseed oil, and I've got the resin chems and stuff like that. I don't really want to be getting onto my keyboard or my mouse right now. It's still quite soft. Periodic poke check. Yeah. So does that mean, Robert, you do a lot of stenotyping? I know what stenographs are, and I understand, like, in general the system, but is that something that takes a lot of practice and learning, a lot of mental game change to actually type on steno, because you can achieve crazy stupid words per minute, right? Since it's phonetic based, no? And Mudkip Slaps says, a dream would be getting dye sublimated keycaps made for each switch. Well, you know you could, because Woke Chill, Andrew, who was in the chat earlier at Chillcaps, does dye sub keycaps. So get on top of that, chat to him about it, and he could get you a dye sub keycap for each of those switches. I don't think it would be too hard. It's just a matter of how much money you are willing to put into this venture. But of course, if it's going to take you 2 years, well, you got plenty of time to save up, right? So this one's starting to firm up a little bit. Probably okay to demold the other half, not pull the stem out, but let's have a look at what emerald green mustache and black edging looks like. Whoa, look at that. That's pretty cool. Look of the Irish, maybe. A bit of a paddy cap. It's kind of almost horrific looking, to be honest, but some interesting colors coming out today, courtesy of the viewers, which is pretty cool. Alrighty. And there's the other one. It's very ominous looking, isn't it? Having that black back masking. It's pretty cool though. It's pretty cool. Dr. Doomapple, what is your opinion on metal keycaps? CNC keycaps, not the cheap zinc ones. I think they're cool. They're just very expensive. So, you know, Rama works. They've got some really lovely caps. I got to see some at the meetup. They're just frightfully expensive. The all metal keycaps group buy Kickstarter thingy, the AMCs, fantastic. Like getting a brass one or the copper one would have been really great, but once again, they're really expensive. Are they necessary? Of course not. But we are in a hobby that is completely unnecessary. So, you know, I think that can be pushed aside. They're cool. I don't know so much if the sound is really something that I like, because they don't echo in the same way as the switches. They make clicky switches have a high ping, because rather than the cap absorbing and being like a boom chamber, like a reverb chamber, it becomes a reflection because of the metal, and so it makes pings more pingy, if anything. But that's just my personal experience and the way that my ears perceive things. Having an entire keyboard would be cool, but in winter it would probably be unpleasant to type on because it would be so cold. But mud kip flaps slaps, wouldn't that kill the switch? No. Having metal keycaps won't kill the switch, because these keycaps generally don't weigh so much that they actually cause the switch to self-actuate, and the springs that are inside your switch normally will not be stressed past their fatigue point anyway. The only concerns is if there are really sharp edges on the actual stem component when you fit it onto the stem of the switch, that it might shave and damage, deform the actual stem, but other than that it shouldn't really be an issue. So yeah, 8 grams. So a normal keycap, an ABS keycap for example, usually typically weighs about 1 gram. So it's 8 times the weight, but when you've got actuation force of 35, 45, 80 grams, it's not really that big a deal. Technically it means the tap force for actually actuating your key is going to be lower, because it's already got that default extra weight in it. Okay, so that's firmed up enough that I'm confident I can detach that. So here goes. Get the right size Allen key to fit. And 3, 2, 1, pop. That came out good, as expected. Once again, another beautiful clean cruciform inside. Superb. Loving this. This working with this flax oil is amazing. I am so glad that I've kept discussions with Binge on the synth process, because I get to learn, I get to develop my skills, and then I get to share as well with all of you guys. So, how am I going to get in there? Yeah. Chop that there, chop that there, and chop that there. There we go. Piece tried to assault me. Assault with a deadly resin. Alright, so all of that side's cleaned up. Referring to the stems housing due to friction, get that in the hobby airsoft. People work on fugus. So, fugus is done by Marcus, isn't it? Eat the food. Nightcaps. I think it's a one-man show, dude. So, yeah. Airsoft is illegal in Australia, by the way, which I think it's a little bit silly. We have very strong gun laws in Australia, but you know, it's designed to protect, so you can't really complain too much. The number of firearm related instances of crime and accidents in Australia is obviously significantly less because of our laws, but at the same time, you know, even things like paintball is very challenging to be in because of these laws. So that nice and clean. It's beautiful. So if you want to be competitive in paintball, your paintball marker is actually treated the same as a firearm. So you need to have a firearms license because they can fire deadly projectiles. And you also need to have a gun cabinet too. So that's the other thing, that it needs to be locked. It has to be mounted to the floor or weigh more than 150 kilos. You have to have a back to base alarm system. All of these things just for a paintball marker. And it's because, you know, you can put a dangerous projectile into it, like a ball bearing, whatever, overpressure your air tank, 300 plus psi, whatever, go out and nail somebody in the head and kill them. That said, things like bows are not regulated in this country because, well, it's a lot easier to see someone coming down the road with a bow. But crossbows are regulated because they're treated like firearms, because they are preloadable, more compact, easier to conceal and carry, and are very lethal at range. So, well, to a certain extent anyway. The accuracy of crossbows is not as good as some other methods of assailing people, if you want to put it that way. Why does this one not want to come out? Huh? Why do you not want to behave? Okay, so that one's popped out nicely. Cool, but nice. I think really the only, I suppose, annoyance between the Synth 1.2 and the 2 is that the surface finish, the tooling marks, make it easier for resin to bind to it on the old one, whereas that finish on the new 2.0 is nice and smooth, that resin's practically just come straight off it. Like, I don't have to really scrape and scratch and try and get it off, even though both of them being coated in the same way with the release agent. And it's just because of this milling surface. You can see the CNC, the spirals on the actual surface, if it'll focus. Yeah, so you can see the tooling marks on that. That just gives the actual resin a surface to get in on, which, yeah, is frustrating, because then, you know, you have to kind of clean that off, otherwise your mold's not sitting flat and flush and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a consideration that a really good fine finish is really important on these kinds of things. Now, come on. Alright, that one's cleaned off now. Time to pop out this one. Let's have a look. As a person who loves mechanical engineering, you can make a shotgun on PVC and loose parts, so it's odd to restrict. Yeah. Yeah. I concur with you there. It's very easy to make firearms if you really wanted to make firearms. Nothing's going to stop you. But that's just how the law is. Whee! Holy smokes. Damn. So that one snapped all of those bits out and blew out that massive hole in the middle, and there's little shards of poly all over my pants, which I'm just getting rid of now. Hopefully, though, the crucifix has survived. And it has! Victory! So, come on. Focus. Yeah, so you can see it's done alright. And hopefully these will just come off. Yep, they're just breaking off pretty easily once it's separated from that bit. Although these bits are sticking. Why are you sticking? Oh, there it goes. Needed some encouragement. You can do it. You can get off that. There we go. So even though I did actually oil this before, it's still sticking quite firmly. But it just means I need to be a bit more proactive in making sure that these surfaces do get a good film of oil on them. So otherwise they will stick quite considerably. But whereas I oiled the crucifix really well, and that just popped out with no issues whatsoever. September Ghosts asks about what my wife thinks. It's not too personal. My wife doesn't mind mechanical keyboards. She does like them, but she doesn't feel that she needs to have one. I have offered her, you know, usage of mechanical keyboards, but it's not, she doesn't do anywhere as much typing or gaming as I do. so she doesn't feel that it's an absolute need. She does appreciate it. She went to the meetup and everything, and she got to see, you know, and feel a bunch of different keyboards there as well. She does hang out with me, you know, in the background when I'm recording videos and whatnot, so she knows exactly what's going on. She has learnt a lot about mechanical keyboards through, I suppose, osmotic learning. It's maybe one way of describing it. It's, you know, listening to me talk to others, and through various Discords and Slacks and stuff like that when I'm chatting to people. You know, she's kind of like a bystander enthusiast, in that it's not a primary enthusiastic response, but it's in no way a negative response. So, and as you can kind of see in the background over there, there's my wife's sewing setup, which, you know, I use to make sleeves and stuff like that, but my wife is more into painting and sewing, so, and they're not exactly conflicting hobbies with mechanical keyboards, except for when the sewing machine is running full pelt, because then I can't do videos and stuff like that. But, you know, life is all about give and take, right? And at least it keeps me out of her hair if I'm doing mechanical keyboard stuff and not gallivanting out, going to bars and clubs and stuff or something. I don't know. Maybe. Right, so this keycap is also being very hard to get out. It's very stiff. I'm not sure why, but I wonder if it's because I've left it on for longer than I was before, and it's somehow shrinking and gripping tighter on the actual stem base. Because I did dip this and I did wipe it, so it's well lubricated. Just not 100% sure why it's acting so tight. I'm going to try and give that a clean up and trim on the inside here. See if that'll help it any. That's pretty flush. Very strange. Now, you should see German gun lore. If you have an arrow that slides over the barrel, it's still a toy. Someone built one from wood pipes, 1 kilojoule. Oh yeah, slingshot guy. Ha 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 ha. Slingshot guy. He's crazy, man. That guy is insane with what he does, and rubber bands. So you know, but that's cool at the same time. He has a lot of subscribers too. I did archery for many years competitively. I actually still coach archery remotely through the through social media for people at my club, as well as people who, because I used to work in retail in archery, and so people who I know from that period still come to me sometimes for a little bit of coaching. So, you know, I'm very familiar and well versed with archery related things, arrows and whatnot. So what's this question? Do you think making a hand wire job for an arcade stick type keyboard for my fighting game would be viable? Yes, 100% viable. There's no reason why you couldn't. Is there? Why do you not want to come out? There we go. Oh, that pop sound is always frightening. And I've gone and destroyed this keycap. So, in trying to get it out, I have crushed the stem. Look at that. Just completely obliterated it. I think I know what the reason is. I think I know what the reason is now. Completely obliterated that stem. The reason is the holding groove. That's what's causing it to not come out. That's what's not causing it to come out. It's doing too good a job of actually gripping the resin. So what that does mean though is when I prepare this, I do need to ensure that that's going to have either just like maybe a bit of tape on it, or maybe I just have to fill it with the oil so that it will actually allow it to release. But let's see how bad this is. Well, a keycap still fits on it. I mean, it still fits on the actual keycap, so I would say that it's lost probably a third of the stem. Yeah, that's way too loose to be of any good. Oh well, that's a dead cap. That's all right. Shit happens. Oh man, Ripperoonies. Have you ever thought about using CNC metal stems? Man, the tolerances on metal stems though, because they're metal, they don't have flex or give or can compress, would make it really hard, and you'd have to get those edges really rounded off, otherwise you are just going to be shaving stems every time that you put caps on top of them. So probably not the best idea. Plus the actual weight of the stem itself being in metal would mean that you have to think about the considerations and the impact that it has on the switch activation and the spring. Did a couple 1 years ago, straightforward, pricey though. Community for flight sticks is huge and controls are easy to come by. Yeah, so I would expect that to be about right. I think Hackaday website would probably be a good, is it Hackaday? Yeah, place to look up those kind of things probably. Okay, so what have we learnt today? What have we found today? What have we experienced today? Well, first of all, you guys have some interesting choices in colors. So the ones that we've done today, we've only done 3 colors in 3 hours. Pretty slow going, I suppose, but faster than 24 hours. We got the ruby red on white. We've got the bright purple, which isn't very bright, on the turquoise. And then we've got the emerald green on the black. So we can definitely do that color sort of layering. It's not full mixing because I'm still shotting the white underneath for bubble freeness is one way of describing it. But more importantly, what we've been able to find today, at least from experimentation, because I've never done this before, is that flaxseed oil works very well as a release agent. So if you're looking to get into casting and you don't want to go and spend a lot of money, you can probably get a small amount of flaxseed oil and it will go a long way. Now that's not going to go back into the main container, but when I'm done today, I'll probably have to find another little bottle for it, because obviously I've had to pour a lot so I can dip and roll that around in it, but it will last a long time because it doesn't use up very much at all. So I'm going to have to call it here for the moment, only because it's well past, it's almost 1 o'clock here. So, you know, past lunchtime, I need some food, have a bit of break because I've been talking a lot as well in the last 3 hours. And then I've got still heaps of resin to go here. So I'm just going to probably maybe do a bit more casting if I feel like it after lunch. Otherwise, I'll just put those, you know, back into the main jar maybe. Probably not, only because they've been sitting out and they'll be absorbing moisture. I don't know, we'll do something with that. I'll do something with that. And yeah, so thanks very much, guys, for those 7 who are still here. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with me, especially if you've been here the entire time for 3 hours watching me cast and whatnot. Really appreciate it. We have hit 800 subscribers, so please head over to the rest of the channel if you haven't been to the rest of our channel and click on the Gleam.io link so that you can have a chance by subscribing, visiting some websites, a chance to win the Board Podcast mug. Now, hopefully this weekend we'll be back to our full strength of hosts. Kevin should be back as per normal, hopefully, and we'll have another episode for you on mechanical keyboards. So, as I like to say, my catchphrase, our catchphrase, the catchphrase. Until next time, happy clacking. Of course, because of that cutoff, I have to wait until the stream catches up before I cut off, and this speech itself will be cut off, so we'll go from there. Hooroo.